Thank you so much, Amy Franck, for joining me for the Veterans Summit and to talk about a very difficult subject, sexual harassment and sexual assault in the military. We have got to look straight up at what is going on. It's a problem. It's been a problem for years. And for those that aren't aware, I'd like to give some statistics so they have an understanding of what these numbers really are. Out of the branches, the Army and Navy had the highest reports of sexual assault, according to most recent date from the Department of Defense, DoD. For fiscal year 2019, there were 2,684 reports by service members of the Army and 1,676 during the same period by the Navy. In total, there were 7,825 reports of sexual assault in all branches of the military. A much larger report, which is done every 2 years and was released last year, estimated the number of sexual assaults increased from 14,900 in 2016 to 20,500 in 2018. The DoD also noted that sexual assault remains an underreported crime in both civilian and military populations. One of the reasons it is so wonderful to be able to speak with you, Amy, is because of your extensive background working on behalf of children that have been victims of assault, and that you have had 15,000 hours of victim advocacy, which is tremendous. You have been identified as a whistleblower on 2 separate occasions for your actions to protect your clients. And I think that your intimate understanding of this entire process, I'd like to ask if you could help me help others that have not been paying attention to this in the news to understand who Vanessa Guillen was and what happened and why that is so major in making an effort to really finally get change.
Well, I think that we can start with looking at the statistics that you talked about, right? Mm-hmm. So in that same 2019 DoD report, it also says 75% of victims of assault and harassment do not report. And of the number that you quoted that do report, 75% of them suffer some form of retaliation within their chain of command, right? So you take that into perspective, and you look at a young service member like Vanessa Guillen, and she told her mother that a sergeant was harassing her. Okay, and the general public is saying, okay, well, that's the young man, Aaron Robinson, that then committed suicide. Well, Aaron Robinson was a specialist. Mm-hmm. No service member is going to call another specialist, because Vanessa was a specialist, right, a sergeant to their mother. It's a big difference, right? And so why was she so afraid to say anything about somebody harassing her, right? That what is going on in the culture that creates the environment, right? Mm-hmm. Who else was involved, right? There is just in my background working with law enforcement, the amount of evidence and blood and those kind of things that go into a violent assault cannot be covered up quickly, especially in an environment where people are having to check weapons in and do things like that. In the 2020 special that ABC aired regarding Vanessa Guillen, the Army was very specific and said that they started canvassing the area and started looking for Vanessa immediately. When Congressman Spear and the other team of congressmen, they found that they didn't start doing any kind of forensics on that armory until her body was found.
Right.
So, this yields to a much larger problem. But if you get back to the crux of it, we have to answer the question as to Why do we have a culture within the military that 75% of the people that are assaulted are afraid? You know why? It's because 75% of the people that do report are ostracized, they're reprised against, they're retaliated against, they're bullied, they're hazed. And sadly for service members like Lavinia Johnson and Maria Louderback and Nicole Burnham and Tina Schenecker and Morgan Robinson, they're either murdered or it's murder by suicide. She told her mom that a sergeant was harassing her.
Okay.
Robinson was not a sergeant. So a service member is not going to call another specialist a sergeant. That's what I'm saying. There's somebody else involved here. So Aaron Robinson, it was reported that he was creepy and like watching the girls and doing all of these things. But who was he interconnected with of higher ranking that there was this whole culture where that he felt protected to do that? Predators have the tendency, birds of a feather flock together, right?
Right.
So if you have a group of individuals that are, upholding the standards and are being moral and ethical, well, you're not going to operate that way around them. But if you have other people, especially people senior to you, that are doing the same kind of things, they're actually giving you permission to behave that way. Aaron Robinson should not be the focal point. So there is a sergeant, because that's what she told her mother.
Right.
And she was so fearful because they were all in the same group. This is how, it's like a small town thing, right?
Yeah.
I kind of compare it to, a small town football team, and the quarterback of the football team is knocking around his girlfriend. But nobody wants to tell on them because they're about to go to regionals and nobody wants to lose. So even the other guys that might be okay, they don't feel like they have the power to speak up against that person. And this is the kind of culture that we're breeding, is that it, and nobody wants to ask the question, who other people saw things, to have an idea that nobody saw what was going on is ridiculous. Furthermore, her common access card, her military identification, it's referred to as an acronym as a CAT card. Well, there's an operational security protocol for when a common access card is found unattended. So the minute that they found her ID card unattended, they were supposed to confiscate the card, try to find the service member. If the service member was not, they couldn't locate them, then they were supposed to notify the chain of command. And then that CAT card was supposed to be turned into the provost marshal. People don't go AWOL without their keys and their wallet and their ID card.
So the entire investigation was not handled at all according to procedure.
Everything that I've seen and read, I can't see where they've done the protocol, right? And who went to the armory? We train soldiers to see something, say something, intervene, act, and motivate. So when you have a service member lugging a huge tough box across the parking lot, nobody saw that. And I'll tell you, my son is an 11 Bravo. Soldier for life. Once a soldier, always a soldier. So he's airborne infantry. They lost a gun at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They shut down the entire base. Why is a weapon more important than a human being? If in fact you have a high rate of service members going AWOL, why? If the situation is so bad in their command on that post, why are they having to go AWOL? So instead of having trust in, programs like mine that help people, you're going AWOL. So either way, it's bad. It's not just Fort Hood. That's why I bring up Lavinia Johnson and Maria Louderback and Morgan Robinson and Nicole Burnham. Lavinia Johnson was sexually assaulted. She was beaten.
And where was she? So that people can catch up with where you're.
She was deployed. She was in the Middle East.
She was okay. She was right.
So she was raped. She was beaten. Her genitals were mutilated. She was set on fire and she was shot.
Oh my God.
Okay. Her family has been fighting this since the early 2000s. The Army still has her death as a suicide. I mean, it's really frustrating to me, because when you have people like Dr. Johnson, who is Lavina's father, who has been fighting since the early 2000s, 15 years the man's been fighting, he and his wife, who he was in the Army. He served 30 years as a Department of the Army civilian. They've had 2 medical examiners have, other exams done on their daughter's remains, and it's completely conclusive that she was assaulted and murdered and left in a contractor's tent. So, and my point to that is Vanessa Guillen is not a new problem. The amount of suicides that happened in Camp Casey in Korea, the unexplained deaths in a deployed environment, the things that going on at Camp Pendleton, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and Fort Bliss, and Fort Bragg as well. I mean, you have a service member that allegedly went camping with some of his other fellow service members and ran upon some rangers, some service, forestry service rangers, and never said that their friend was missing. And then when his head washed up ashore, they said, "Oh, we were looking for him." Well, if you were looking for him when you ran into the Forest Service, why didn't you say your friend was missing? So this issue is pervasive throughout the military.
Yeah.
The Army is happy to make it a localized problem to Fort Hood, and to make it about Vanessa Guillen. Vanessa Guillen, God rest her soul, I hope they get justice for her. But Vanessa Guillen is another murdered soldier because of a continuum of failure.
Right. Do you think because we had just gone through the We Too movement that she became the focal point where people felt this is now something that we've gained momentum with the We Too movement and taken on sexual assault with very high profile people in the film industry, business, so on. And
I mean, I don't know, because we had the Invisible War, that
yes,
documentary that was done in
yes,
the I think mid to 2010-ish.
mhm,
So I mean, we've been looking at this problem for a long time.
a long time, yeah.
The problem is, 60% of our federal tax dollars go to the defense budget. It is one of the largest economic monsters in our country. And defense contracts and lots of things come from the military that people, I don't even think they really understand the overarching huge wheels that we're dealing with. And so we also have an all volunteer service. So if our military looks unsafe, and less than 3% of the American public enlist into the military. So what would happen if everybody felt it was unsafe?
So the motivation is to keep it in-house and try to just make it go away.
Well, if Nicole Burnham is a separate issue at Korea and in Fort Carson, right? So we're going to put her over here. Okay. We're going to put Lavinia way back here. We're going to put Maria Louderback way over here. We're going to put Gregory Morales and this person, we're going to keep them all super separate.
So they connect the dots of
exactly
the enormity of the problem. Yeah.
One death is too many. I mean, there was just, I believe it was in the New York Times, an article about, all the people that had, suffered these abuses throughout the years. I mean, I don't think the general public understands that Jeffrey Dahmer was sexually abusing his barracks mate in Germany when he was active duty. And do you know how many unexplained murders there are in and around that base at the time that he was there?
Gosh, I had no idea.
So, I mean, this problem is just like so huge, right? And if you think about it, you say this problem is localized to Fort Hood, right? Well, that's interesting because service members, PCS, which means move, every 2 to 3 years, right? So the people at Fort Hood, they're going from Fort Hood to deployment, to Korea, to Bliss, to Campbell, to Bragg. I mean, there's only certain, they call them MOSs, which are career fields, and they're localized at certain bases, right? You know, like the air defenders, you know, they have a huge presence in Fort Bliss and in Qatar. Aviators, you know, they're in certain places, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to say it's localized to Fort Hood is ridiculous because those predators move every
Are
2 to 3
moving.
years. The general public has to decide, you know, what's worth it to you. I would say this, that I would rather be suspended or even fired than I would look at a mother like Vanessa Guillen's mom and say, I didn't say anything to about your daughter. I didn't protect her because I was afraid I was going to get fired. I am a sexual assault professional. So I have two main functions, right? Is to advocate and protect the rights of my victims and advise commanders. But who pays me? The command. Who am I having to tell them that they're doing something wrong and harming this other person? The command. So I'm literally placed in a situation, and this is why I'm sitting in the situation that I am, is that for almost a year, I was like, sir, ma'am, you can't do that. That's illegal. Sir, ma'am, you got to report the sexual assault. You can't do that. And I was said, oh, we got this. It's just a training issue. No, letting felony level assault, violent sexual assaults go unreported to any kind of law enforcement, whether it was civilian or the criminal investigation division, is illegal. But I'm looked at as the bad one for saying something. So even like my program, SHARP, Sexual Assault and Harassment Response and Prevention, right? We're still under the Department of the Army, right? So, but here's the thing: as an advocate, and even the advocate program out of the Pentagon, they're not commanders. They can't tell people to do anything. This is a readiness issue. This is the fact that the people that are entrusted to protect our freedom are not free to be protected themselves. When they go outside of their chain of command to get help, when they're getting failed, they get admonished, it gets worse for them, and it's just not worth it. You know, I've had so many service members sitting in front of me crying, saying, you know what, my sexual assault was really bad, but this is worse.
Yeah. And
you know, and that cannot be the standard.
And there are no statistics on the link between suicide and the sexual assault. We
Well,
don't.
because if 75% of victims don't even report it,
That's right.
And then, you know, I know for myself that the majority of my clients have been at some time, and I say majority, I mean 85% of them at some time have been suicidal.
Sure. Yeah.
And and that's the other thing, the sexual assault advocates are not trained properly on how to do safety planning. I mean, I had a young lady that reached out to me in my civilian capacity, and I said, well, you know, you have a SARC and a victim advocate there on Fort Campbell. I said, you know, I'm happy to help you. I said, but, you know, did you guys talk about safety planning? And she's like, what's that? I said, so do you have a protective order against your alleged offenders? Do you have a copy of it? So if you're at Walmart and you see them and they engage you and they start harassing you or something happens, that you have something to show, you know, the local PD that you're supposed to be protected. She's like, no, nobody ever talked to me about that. I said, well, what about if you are feeling desperate or upset or ashamed or having overwhelming feelings that you can't really identify, and you have thoughts of harming yourself? Has anybody talked to you about that? No.
Okay, so that's not part of this training.
No.
They're not addressing trauma at all.
No, I've gone to the Army's 80-hour course and the extended 7-week course. I went to the second iteration of it when it was at Belvoir, and I have seen multiple people come through it. And it is, excuse me, a lot of talking about what the regulations are and what requirements are. But as far as, you know, true delivery of services,
right?
You know, what it looks like to sit in an emergency room with somebody
Yeah.
while they're waiting to get their sexual assault nurse examiner done, talking to them about, you know, what suicide looks like. I mean, it's hard to ask somebody if they're suicidal.
Yeah.
And because you have to be prepared for their response.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what is, if someone says, yeah, I am suicidal, then what?
So you ask them if they have a plan.
Mm-hmm. And then, but if they say, yes, I have a plan, yes, I want to die, and
you do,
they're removed from duty, and that's the end of their career because they have a mental health issue.
well, that a lot of times happens, unfortunately. I have made it a habit to also offering my clients to go to counseling with the local rape crisis centers, because nobody can garner those records.
Right.
So if you are afraid, and I will say this, if you are a service member and you've been assaulted or you've been traumatized or you have PTSD from any kind of trauma and you need assistance, there are local organizations that are federally funded that you can go to that are not obligated to report that to your chain of command. What's more important, that your chain of command knows that you're getting assistance or that you're getting assistance?
Yeah. Well, why is this not something that is like put together as a survivor's guide? I mean,
Because they want to control the narrative.
Okay.
Now, isn't it easier to say, oh, well, Amy's just crazy. She turned into this quote unquote shitbag soldier. She's acting out of class. She's just saying this about this nice soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And, he has a good family, because she just wants an excuse for, being drunk and being late to PT or failing her PT test. It can't be about that. None of those behaviors happened until you guys assaulted me, harassed me, and retaliated against me for saying something.
And also, it's very possible that the person could have been traumatized by a sexual assault prior to being in the military, and that was never dealt with. So
everybody has traumas. You don't go through life in a bubble.
No, but I don't think they treat for, I don't think they screen or handle trauma that could be impacting the fact that once they're traumatized again, it's complex post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, it's compounded.
Yes, it's compounded. And so their ability to be resilient in the face of something like that is compromising their ability to serve and their ability to deal with the trauma, to actually go through the required help that you need.
Well, you need to grieve.
Yes, there are a lot of things you absolutely have to go through, but it sounds to me like what you're describing is that the manual over here is talking about call so-and-so, do X, Y, and Z, and this is how you handle it. And then if you do that, nothing happens. So you've got that problem over here. But in the real world of this person's body and mind and their entire sense of identity and their will to live after they've been horrifically assaulted, it's like, who's got the manual for that? Is it your organization? Is it an outside organization? Has it yet to be developed?
It's there. It's there. Organizations like, TASA, which is the Texas Coalition Against Sexual Assault, ICASA, which is the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault. The level of experience that those organizations know how to deal with it. One of the hugest problems with the military is they're really good at responding to the crisis. Okay, somebody gets sexually assaulted, we're going to do boom, 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 got a checklist. Well, then after that initial crisis is done, the follow-up is what's the problem.
Yeah.
The communication with the victim, the follow-up care. It's like everybody wants to, go to the scene of the ambulance, right? But then it's like, oh, the Smith family's house burnt down. And everybody goes, oh, their house burnt down. But when they're rebuilding their house, when their kids don't have shoes because the insurance money hasn't paid yet, and they've missed work, so they don't really have any extra money, where's everybody at then?
And that's when the trauma is really going to set in.
Yeah, so nobody's there when it's time for this service member to build their house back. But oh, by the way, not only are they traumatized from their assault, but then they get to go to work every day and get judged.
Yes.
So is there anywhere in the free world that if you get sexually assaulted that you have to go tell your boss everything about it? And then, oh, by the way, they get to like monitor everything and talk openly about what happened before and after, and all
and
of these nuances.
Retaliate and intimidate, and
the people don't understand the fact that people are talking about these people's assault. Okay, that in and of itself is a form of retaliation.
Absolutely. Yes.
I mean, everybody's like, well, what does retaliation look like? Well, it's very subjective. I mean, they don't like, normally it's like, oh, well, you were sexually assaulted, we're going to call you a whore in front of the whole formation. But they do it very in a nuanced way.
Or they send you down to the firing range with the person that assaulted you.
Right. So
in this one case,
no, that was actually one of my cases that the young lady was being sexually harassed. I really believe I would identify it more with like a stalking behavior, because not only was she being sexually harassed by this guy, but he also was leaving presents where she slept. And they were sending her and him to a live firing range. And they didn't want to remove him off the range because he was the one running the range. I'm like, regardless of who you think is guilty or innocent or whatever, you're sending someone that's traumatized,
right,
with a gun to somebody else with a gun that knows that this person told on them. Now, what about that sounds like a good idea?
Right. And that's how is that handled? Because it sounds like it's okay, great. We have
we asked for a phone call with the 06, the brigade commander, and he proceeded to tell that young lady, well, we just don't want you to think that you're going to get any special treatment.
So suck it up.
So after the phone call, she calls me crying and is like, why did I even bother saying anything? Yeah. I said, I am so sorry. I mean, it's even when you give them the opportunity and the platform to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Then they make these comments.
Right.
We don't want you to think you get any special treatment. Okay, well, not going with a gun to a firing range with somebody that I have accused of sexual harassment, how's that special treatment? I'm confused. Do you understand? It's
yeah. But the thing is that if you are trying to do the right thing, if you are trying to follow procedure, and what you were met with is somebody who can shut you down, and there are no consequences for them shutting you down, I mean, it's like a vicious circle. You're going to be going round and round and round to the point where you say it's just not worth it. And then you are going to be dealing with this horrific internal trauma. And it's not, you don't get over it.
Well, and I even engaged one of my colleagues about this issue, and I was like, hey, what can we do? And they're like, well, we're just going to have to hope for the best. I'm like, well, that's not a viable solution for me.
No, it's not. So you're the one who is fighting for making these rules that are the policies that they're supposed to follow effective and have some teeth in them.
Well, it's been a law since 2006. The CFR, U.S. Code 32, 105.89, it's been on the books since 2006, that if a commander is notified of a sexual assault, even by a third party, that they are required by law to call law enforcement. Okay.
And the attitude is, well, let's not do that because it would look bad.
Exactly. And they also want to handle things like they were sexual harassment, because then they get to run their own investigation. And we've seen that as a trend. Well, you weren't really sexually assaulted. That's more like a harassment issue. So let's put it over here in this box. When the UCMJ changed and when it involves touching, to sexually gratify yourself or the other party or to demean them, it is. So if I like rub your shoulders and like, oh baby, like you're turning me on, you're giving me, an erection, that is now sexual assault. It is no longer sexual harassment and cannot be handled with a normal 15-6 regulatory command investigation. It has to be sent to law enforcement. It's the lack of utilizing the checks and balances that are already in place.
And how do you do that if there is an unwillingness in the chain of command to execute the policies and move them forward where they need to go?
Well, it's not, it's about holding them accountable. And they want to
Yes.
hold the lowest ranking people accountable, or, throw the whistleblower to the wind.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm frustrated with Vanessa Guillen, because her case is horrific. But it is, the pattern of behavior is there. I mean, you think about male sexual assault, male trauma. What is the best way to demean a man? Most of the male sexual assaults are not done, like they're normally done with an object, right? So it's you are going to completely demean this person, take away every bit of masculinity, make them question their own sexuality. How horrific for these men, and then if they are sexually assaulted and they're anally sodomized, the rate of HIV and all those kind of transmission, because that part of your body has more blood vessels than anybody else, and you're talking about a violent assault, the probability that that's going to happen. I mean, if even you go to any medical provider, they will tell you for anal assaults, the protocols to give people antivirals, as a prophylactic treatment are there because of that. So there's so many third and fourth order effects. The crux of this is that there's no bug out plan for a service member. They can't quit their job. I had a young lady that was sexually assaulted at West Point, and she was in the service, and she was married, and she was like, I just want to get out. And she couldn't get out. She had to finish her obligation. And if somebody's that broken and they can't function, why do you want them there? Because they are unsafe for other people. I don't want my sons going on a deployment with anybody that their mental, where they're at is not in the game. And then you have people that, are dealing with all this stuff. And you think about it, people join the military to escape a lot of stuff.
Tell me about your organization, your foundation, and what you were doing, because it's really impressive and it is an answer for many to be able to get your guidance and your help through your organization.
Well, the day after my Associated Press articles were published, I woke up to a text message on social media, and that was the start of it. And it was Debbie Robinson, her daughter Morgan, had been assaulted and then gang raped in a deployed environment, and then her offenders were not held accountable. She was retaliated against, and she took her own life. And that is kind of what started it. And then I was really just needing some support, and one of my other colleagues said, oh, you have to call Major General Shadley, retired. He's so awesome, he'll help you. And I thought, okay, I'll try. And so I did, and we just organically have grown this organization called Never Alone Advocacy. And we're offering help to help advocate for people. This process of getting some kind of justice, and we don't promise what kind of justice we can do, but we do know the process, and getting people in touch with the right people, and getting articles written, and people having the conversation that needs to be had. We have been very successful. Actually, Senator Klobuchar just submitted a letter 2 days ago from our recommendations of our review of Nicole Burnham's death investigation and the lack of accountability. So, we're a very young organization, but we're already seeing results.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
And what's your website is?
It's www.neveraloneadvocacy.org. And so you can go on there and read about all of our profiles. You can click on the news stories. You can see what kind of things that we can do. And we're really going to try to interconnect with different services that are already there. You know, just like I was talking about, like TASA, and, you know, I'm really connected with the different sexual assault and rape crisis centers here in Illinois. And, you know, when people reach out to me, I can find them counseling sources, you know, in their communities.
That is so fantastic, because when you have been traumatized, your ability to think about what you need to do next, I mean, it's all so overwhelming, and your brain is just not in a state to do that. And you need someone to advocate for you, and for them to be able to call. And with your incredible track record, and Major Shadley also had an incredible track record, didn't he, with a particular case where he...
Yeah, so General Shadley is the only general officer that properly investigated and prosecuted a sex scandal. And he did that in the 90s at Aberdeen Proving Ground. And he and I have had a lot of conversations with that. And actually, my whistleblower complaint has identified 30 military personnel for adverse findings, 18 of which are field grade and general officers. So he's like, Amy, that's bigger than Aberdeen. And, you know, and we're still seeing more and more coming out. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next. All I know is that we're going to use our voices.
Yes.
And I use the starfish approach. You know, I can save as many as I can.
Right. Right. When you throw the one back, the little boy said, well, that one.
It mattered to that one.
Mother says you can't save all of them, you know, and he said, well, I saved that one.
That's right. And, you know, and it's, yeah. And I think healing and people showing that they care is infectious.
And is this the kind of organization where non-veterans can get involved to try to help spread the word? Or I feel like often a non-veteran will hear about issues that are going on, and that's part of what the whole Veteran Summit thing is about, is to provide these alternative therapies, treatments, healing options, resources for things that they might not have heard about, or names. And you know, if it's something where a civilian can come forward and say, wow, I would really love to help you do that and let people know about you. Or
absolutely. I mean, I really think it's important that civilians know what's going on in their military. Like I said, yes. less than 3% of the American public serves in the military. Yeah. And so they just think that, you know, it's the same reason why, you know, people in uniform, you know, like firemen and police officers and doctors, that, you know, that when they violate the trust of the public, yeah. why it's so much more horrific.
Right.
Because you're supposed to be a helper, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when a preacher, you know, molests a child in their church, you know, you are in a position of trust. Right. And the military is in a position of trust with our entire nation.
Yeah.
And they're lying.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I mean, I have had many, many commanders that I've worked for, and I have not had a problem with any of them. 2 of them have violated the law and not stopped violating the law when advised what you're doing is incorrect. So, you know, and that's the point with this Military Justice Improvement Act, is that they want to take it all the way out of the military, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good idea, because if you have a good commander, it's great. Right. Right. My first brigade commander, he's now a general officer. No problem. You know, worked for 2 other colonels at Fort Meade, worked for General Fogarty, General Nakasone, you know, General Darrell Williams, like all these great people, Colonel Hale, Colonel Brendenkamp, you know, all of these really great people, never had a problem. I have 2 bad commanders, and it's the roll of the dice.
There's a feeling from some of the interviews that I've seen that that the women are very competitive. They have to work really hard to get ahead. And so for them to join together and be talking about sexual assault, that is not so much what they would do. This is what I have been told, because they are already trying to get ahead, and they don't want to risk that this other person might tell on them. And it's unfortunate that that is part of the climate.
Well, I mean, this is why Vanessa Guillen didn't say anything to anybody.
Right.
She wanted to continue to be perceived as a strong soldier.
Right.
And she, in her mind, could not afford to be looked at as weak or unable to handle her own situations.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, we all need help.
Yeah.
And asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And I really think that the military has a very bad habit of labeling people as weak or not resilient when they ask for help.
Right. And being able to know that there are places that you could go get help where it would not be reported, as you were talking about early, is really an important thing. And we definitely want to include those resources on the website for the Veterans Summit, as many as we can find. And I think you sent plenty to me that I would like to.
Yeah, I mean, I've had service members that have absolutely refused to even sign a DD 2910, the Victim Preference Reporting Statement, even as a restricted report, because they were afraid. They're like, well, we trust you, Amy, but if it got into somebody else's hand, we don't know what they would do with it. And those are kept on file, a hard copy, for 50 years. And so they're afraid to put their name on a piece of paper. That should speak volumes. And then, you know, we have some commands that are like, what do you mean you're helping somebody? Do you have a new case? Well, yeah, but they don't want to give their name.
Right.
Oh, well, how do we know you're actually working? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Right.
I can't with you people, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. It really is something. And I'm just,
I was like, I don't know, call the local rape crisis center. I mean, maybe everybody's just lying for me, right? And I'm actually like not doing anything, not going to work. You know what I mean? It's just completely ridiculous.
yeah.
But when and these are senior people that are afraid to put their name on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean to you when I say that?
They're so afraid.
Yeah.
They're so afraid. So it's like they're traumatized.
And this is with no investigation, no nothing. This is just like, I don't even want to sign a piece of paper documenting that I was assaulted and that I'm asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you could perform any kind of duty with all of that stress and agony over just trying to protect yourself. And I mean, it's just horrific. It really is. And I'm sorry that we can't, have rainbows and dandelions over this.
Well, I think we have to have this conversation over and over again. We have to have transparency. We have to put it out. I mean, my poor sons, my 3 sons are like, they're so well educated on sexual assault and culture issues. They're like, Mom, we're at the grocery store. Mom's going to talk to the cashier about it. Like,
yeah, but it's important for everybody to know. And I do think that civilians are out of the loop about the military just in general.
Well, they should pay attention to their legislators.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the Democratic nominees for Senate in North Carolina that's running right now, like he just got in trouble for sexting somebody else's spouse. I mean, look at what's going on with our politicians. You know, I mean,
yeah, it's time to reboot the entire culture, because it's really the predatory nature against the people that are trying to defend our country, and the sacrifices they are making, and then the care they are getting for the wounding that's happening to them. It just needs to really be called out. And I'm really grateful that you are advocating for these people and giving them help when they are really at the point of suicide. And
I mean,
not knowing what to do.
It's so disheartening when people are like, Well, and you've gotten so many people in trouble. Whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't tell them to break the
Good
law.
trouble. Good trouble.
Well, no, I didn't tell them to break the law. I didn't
Yeah.
ill-advise my commands.
Right.
You were advised and you continued on that path. You broke the law. You got yourself in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I look like accountability to you doesn't mean you get to lash out at me.
Right. Right. And accountability is it comes down to that.
Well, and you shouldn't be judged for mistakes that you make.
Right. Right.
They should be judged for how they come out of them.
Right.
And what they're doing at Fort Hood tells me they haven't learned.
Right. Yes.
They have not learned.
And the spotlight on this, like when you think of the Catholic Church and the issue with the priests and
we've spoken to Spotlight.
Yeah. And that being, opened up and the public getting to know that in a much bigger way, a much more personal way, that's puts a lot of pressure that, if we don't know, we just read about a case and we think, oh, it's being handed off, somebody's doing something. And that we need to stay and follow these things and see, are the bills getting passed? When was it presented? When is it going to come up for a vote? Who can I call? Who can I help? How can I?
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to give a list of legislators that people can email and, petition for their support in these changes.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the more people know and the more they realize these are the people that they were willing to give their life for this country. Please, you need to step up.
Well, my question to people that don't think it's their problem, do you want your son or daughter join the military? And the answer more times than not is never.
Yeah.
But you enjoy this freedom, right? But you don't want to sacrifice your children, but you're fine with other people's children being sacrificial. But we don't want to make a change to make it safe.
Yeah.
The fact that you look on the death record, that there has been more deaths in relation to sexual trauma and suicide than there have been from enemy fire in the last wars. Now that should really say a lot.
Yes.
Our soldiers are not being killed exponentially by the enemy. They're being killed by the people among them.
That's really horrifying.
That's frightening.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is.
And that's their own numbers that they put out publicly that nobody pays attention to.
Yeah. But they should know. I mean, these are crimes that are not being punished. And that can't.
It's very simplistic. Why don't you speed?
Yeah.
Why do most people, they don't speed?
Why don't they speed?
Right.
Because they're going to get caught and they're going to get a humongous fine.
Yeah, they're going to get a ticket, right?
Yes.
Nobody's getting tickets.
No.
Like nobody's getting tickets. Like we need a version of the highway patrol at Fort Hood. Let's make Fort Hood an example of change, right? Like Fort Hood, I challenge you to invite the Texas Coalition Against Sexual Assault to have an office on your base. Give them access to the base. Give them an office so that those service members that don't feel safe going to the sexual assault program or their command have a civilian resource right there on post. What would it hurt?
Yeah. That's a great idea.
No, I'm putting this out publicly on your forum as a challenge to the United States Army. Invite the Texas Coalition Against Sexual Assault, give them a building on your post.
Let's see if we can get some media coverage for that. It's like a throwdown. Right?
I mean, you guys want to keep all the control. You want to keep all the power. Let them come to your case management SARBs. Okay. Let them have an office on post. Let's see.
Yeah. That would be wonderful.
Why not?
Let's track it.
You don't have to pay them. They're already getting federally funded through Victims of Crime Act, VOCA, and Violence Against Women Act, VAWA.
Mm-hmm. So it would be a show of how sincere you are.
Mhm.
It's a great idea, Amy.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens.
I've been thinking about this very hard.
I know that you will. You are in this spot for a very good reason. I know that. If you were to say, after all of this, which is, sort of the brutal, hard truth of it all, and you've got somebody on the other end who's saying, man, now what? This is bleak. Now what? What can they do? Can they look on your website and contact you and say, now what for me? I have this is what's going on. I'm afraid to talk. I'm afraid to.
I mean, yes, we are completely available. We are, advocating for people currently. We have, a kind of a vetting process to make sure of where the case is, what's going on, and, making sure that we're not putting the cart before the horse, right?
Right.
But, absolutely.
So you can give them resources and recommendations, like
absolutely.
if you're having mental health problems, I'd suggest you try this group. If you're having, nightmares or whatever, that
Well, I know what the resources are, and I can help get them to the right place.
That's really
I want to
critical.
say, I'm not a mental health counselor.
Right.
I do not provide mental health counseling. That is not my forte.
But you know where to go.
I know what the resources are. I'm happy to do referrals,
Mm-hmm.
But, and one of the things is, we work with our clients as a team.
Right.
We are there to advocate for their best outcome. Mm-hmm. And, they're involved in the process. It's not like we take it and there's no involvement from the client.
Right.
This is an interactive partnership,
Mm-hmm.
We getting people to the right places.
That's great. They need to know that somebody has their back, and can tell them the truth about everything. And I think that being able to let people know through our conversation, there's a lot of work to be done. Mm-hmm. And the more people that know it can get involved and try to make a voice for that and say, we need to do better.
And I would tell people too, as civilians, support your local rape crisis centers.
Yeah.
Support your local child advocacy centers. They're doing, really, really hard and good work.
Yeah. Know where they are, know who they are. Mm-hmm. So important. And that is just great. Well, Amy, thank you so much for doing
Thank you, Jane.
This.
I'm glad we got everything recorded.
We got it recorded, and it will be there on the library, the Veterans Summit forever for free. And hopefully
very good.
We'll do a redo at some point where there will be changes to talk about. That's what I would look forward to. And I would look forward to sending this out to everybody that needs to know where we need work.
Yes.
So there are some special email lists that may appreciate knowing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
you
I'm sure we'll have more conversations. You are too. Thank you, Jane. It's been lovely speaking with you.
It has been just great. And thank God they've got you on their side.
Oh, thank you, dear. Have a nice day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.